You know that exact moment when a thought pops into your head, something deeply honest, maybe a little vulnerable, and your brain just immediately slams on the emergency brake.
Oh, absolutely. You instantly think, nope, I absolutely cannot say that out loud.
Right. You think they will think I'm weak or, unprofessional or just completely unhinged.
Yeah, and we all do it.
You probably do it every day. You spend a massive amount of energy curating this perfectly polished version of yourself.
Especially at work, or early on in a relationship.
Exactly. And you do it because you're terrified that the messy, unresolved truth is going to push people away. But what if we have the entire equation completely backwards?
It's a huge question.
It is. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore a wild, deeply counterintuitive concept, why the very things you are most terrified to say out loud might actually be your greatest asset.
And we're basing this on a really eye-opening conversation with a top Harvard Business School professor and behavioral scientist.
Right. We've got decades of research here on honesty, trust, and how human beings make decisions. Okay, let's unpack this. Because for anyone listening who wants to advance their career or improve their marriage, or honestly, just stop feeling so exhausted all the time, this research completely flips the script on what it means to be put together.
It really is a paradigm-shifting idea. The data tells a story that fundamentally challenges our cultural programming. We're taught from a very young age to equate stoicism with strength.
Keep it together, stiff upper lip, all that.
Exactly. Never let them see you sweat. But the reality is that this deeply ingrained habit of hiding our true feelings isn't protecting us. It is actively bankrupting our relationships, our physical health, and ironically, our career trajectories.
And I want to start with the most jarring finding right out of the gate, because we aren't just talking about feeling warm and fuzzy here. The data shows that sharing more, including highly sensitive or outright negative things about yourself, actually makes you more money.
Yes.
And it massively increases your professional influence.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a fast track to getting fired, doesn't it?
Right.
Just go into the boardroom and start oversharing all your flaws. But the economics of trust operate on a very specific psychological mechanism.
Go.
When you reveal something sensitive, you aren't just dumping information. You're sending a profound, subconscious signal to the other person.
There's this massive randomized experiment with the Commonwealth Bank of Australia that perfectly illustrates this. I read this and my jaw genuinely dropped. So customers are on the bank's website looking to sign up for a credit card.
Okay.
And researchers convinced the bank to do the unthinkable, explicitly list the reasons why a customer might not want to get their credit card.
Which is wild.
They literally put right there on the screen, like, pay attention, the fees on this card are really high.
No.
Or, the rewards points aren't actually that great. They shed a massive spotlight on their own biggest flaws.
Which violates every marketing playbook ever written.
Yeah.
The standard operating procedure is to bury the high fees in page 40 of the fine print and just hope nobody reads it.
Exactly. You're trying to trap them. But the result of doing the exact opposite, it didn't scare customers away. It didn't tank their acquisition metrics.
Not at all.
Instead, it radically increased customer retention and built immense trust. That single experiment of admitting a flaw made the bank millions of dollars in revenue.
It's incredible.
And it doesn't just work for giant financial institutions. It applies to individual managers, too. There's another study where leaders introduced themselves to new hires, and some of those leaders intentionally planted a few of their actual genuine weaknesses into their intro.
Like what?
Things like, I really struggle with organization, or I get incredibly nervous speaking in public.
And you would assume the new employees would think, wow, this person is totally incompetent. Why are they in charge?
Right, but the data showed the exact opposite. The employees actually wanted to work for those vulnerable leaders more. It's almost like an optical illusion. What looks like professional sabotage on the surface, admitting you're bad at something, is actually the ultimate power play for building unshakable trust. Yeah. Because you're completely disarming the other person's skepticism before they even have a chance to put their guard up.
It's a brilliant way to frame it. What's fascinating here is why that optical illusion works. Sharing a weakness isn't about proving your incompetence. It's about signaling that you trust your audience. When that bank says, our fees are high, or when a manager says, I'm terrible at public speaking, they're implicitly saying, I trust you enough to hand you the weapons that could hurt me.
Wow.
And human beings are deeply biologically reciprocal creatures. When we feel that someone inherently trusts us, it triggers a reflex to trust them in return. It builds a foundational loyalty that a perfectly polished, flawless facade just cannot trigger.
Okay, I can see how that works when we're talking about credit card fees or workplace logistics. It's a calculated risk. But what happens when we take this out of the boardroom and into our personal lives?
The perceived stakes absolutely go up.
Yeah, because it feels exponentially higher when it's just you sitting across a table from someone you're trying to date, and the flaw is deeply personal.
And because they go up, our instinct to hide becomes even stronger. But the psychological dynamic remains exactly the same. In fact, it's magnified.
Which brings us to this wild thought experiment about dating from the source material. Imagine you have two potential dates. You ask both of them, point blank, have you ever had a sexually transmitted disease?
Which, I mean, that is an intensely forward question for a first date.
Obviously, but just go with the premise here. Person A admits, actually, yes, I have a history of STDs. Person D looks at you, gets defensive, and says, I refuse to answer that question.
It's a brutal dilemma. Neither of those is the answer you were hoping to hear.
But the results are staggering. Around 65% of people choose the person who admits to having the STD over the person who pleads the fifth.
It's amazing.
And this dynamic bleeds into professional hiring, too. They ran a similar study where 89% of people preferred to hire a candidate who openly admitted to getting failing grades in school over someone who simply opted out of answering the question entirely.
This raises such an important question about human nature, right? Why are we so drawn to the messy, complicated truth, but so repulsed by silence?
Well, I want to bring in a legal analogy here because it highlights how backward our instincts are. In a court of law, pleading the Fifth Amendment isn't supposed to make you look guilty. A jury is explicitly instructed not to make an automatic inference of guilt just because you refuse to testify.
Right, it's a constitutional right.
Exactly. So we're trained to think of silence as a safe, neutral space. It's a shield. But socially, pleading the fifth is an immediate, glaring, deafening alarm bell.
Exactly. The legal system demands neutrality, but socially, neutrality just does not exist. It is impossible for the human brain not to draw a negative inference from silence.
You just can't help it.
We can't. When someone explicitly abstains from answering a sensitive question, we don't think to ourselves, oh, what a healthy boundary they're maintaining. We feel contempt. We assume they're a liar.
Yeah.
And more importantly, our imaginations just run wild. We assume whatever they are hiding is catastrophically worse than whatever the actual truth is.
We fill in the blank with our absolute worst nightmare.
Precisely. Conversely, the person who reveals their flaws, even something as stigmatized as an STD or a failing grade, is implicitly saying, I relinquish control. I am handing you the truth, and I trust you not to make a fool out of me.
Right.
That specific, terrifying act of vulnerability forces that reciprocal baseline of human trust we talked about earlier. You might not love the information they just shared with you, but you fundamentally trust them as a reliable narrator of reality.
And in a relationship, a reliable narrator is the most valuable thing you can find.
Absolutely.
Which makes total sense when you lay it out like that. But that leads me to a massive contradiction. If revealing the truth makes people trust us and hiding makes people think we're deceptive liars, why is our default setting always to hide? Like, why are we constantly fighting our own best interests?
Because we are caught in a crossfire between our fundamental evolutionary biology and our cultural conditioning. And unfortunately, the culture usually wins that battle very early in our lives.
The biological side of this is fascinating. There's this hardcore neuroscience study where researchers put people in a functional MRI machine to scan their brain activity.
Yeah.
And they didn't even ask them to reveal deep, dark, traumatic secrets. They just asked them basic personal questions. Things like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Super low stakes.
Extremely low stakes. And when people simply answered truthfully about themselves, the ancient pleasure centers of their brains physically lit up on the scan.
Yes. The exact same neural pathways that light up for food or sex. We are quite literally hardwired to feel intrinsic chemical pleasure when we share the truth about ourselves.
That is wild.
And it makes sense evolutionarily. We are herd creatures. We relied on strong, cohesive group relationships to survive in the wild. So evolution made the act of connecting through self-disclosure chemically rewarding. It was a survival mechanism to keep the tribe bonded.
And it doesn't just make us feel good, it physically calms our nervous systems down. There is an incredible study involving preschoolers watching a scary movie.
Oh, I love this one.
It's so good. The researchers are tracking how much fear the kids are letting show on their faces, and at the same time, they're measuring their physiological stress, specifically looking at their galvanic skin response,
Hmm.
or basically how sweaty their palms get.
Right.
The kids who actually let their fears show, the ones who outwardly reacted and gasped at the scary parts, had significantly lower physiological stress. Their palms were less sweaty. By outwardly revealing the emotion, their bodies were actually able to process it.
But then we hit the tragedy of Stoicism. That exact same study found that by the time those children reached kindergarten, just a year or two later, a distinct gender difference had already emerged.
So fast.
So fast. The boys had learned to hold it in. They had already been culturally conditioned to adopt these toxic norms of Stoicism.
There's a story that perfectly captures this, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. A young boy is at a funeral for a family member. Naturally, he starts to get very upset and begins to cry. And a well-meaning adult puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "Hey, you gotta be strong for mom."
Ugh.
And from that single defining moment, "be strong for mom," becomes this lifelong psychological blockade. He just shuts down his emotions entirely. We literally train each other to suppress the exact biological mechanism that is designed to help us process stress.
And that suppression comes at a tremendous cost.
Mm-hmm.
When you override your biological imperative to share, you don't magically eliminate the emotion, you just trap it inside the body.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I have to push back a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
When I hear that we're all bottling things up, I immediately think about the people who, well, never stop talking. We all know extroverts who will talk your ear off for hours. Surely they don't have this problem of hiding everything, right?
It's a great point. But there's a concept called the extroversion illusion. We confuse volume with vulnerability. Just because someone is highly talkative does not mean they are actually revealing anything of substance.
No.
An extrovert might talk to you for an hour about logistics or sports or office gossip or what they bought at the store, but that is just a smokescreen. Revealing your internal emotional reality is a completely different skill than just having the gift of gab. You can be the loudest person in the room and still be entirely emotionally sequestered.
Wow. Okay, so even the loud people are hiding, which means we really need to look at the daily toll of ignoring this hardwiring. Let's talk about what happens when you suppress things day after day after day.
The slow drip.
Exactly. Think about your own morning today. Imagine you have a clear mason jar sitting on your kitchen counter, and every time you have a thought or a feeling that you decide to suppress, you drop a ping pong ball into that jar.
And we aren't talking about massive, life-altering secrets here. We're talking about the mundane, everyday suppressions.
Exactly. The little things. You wake up next to your partner, you say, "Good morning," but internally you're thinking, "I feel incredibly depressed today, and I am just so exhausted." You don't say it. Pink. You drop a ball in the jar,
Right.
you go to the bathroom, you look in the mirror, and you think, "I look so much older than I thought I would at this age." You keep it to yourself. Ping.
Yep.
You go downstairs, your spouse asks what the kids should have for a snack, and you just snap, "I don't care, just pick something." You don't explain that you are suppressing massive anxiety about a huge presentation at work, and you just have zero decision-making energy left. Ping! Ping.
It adds up so fast.
You get to work, your boss asks how you are, you force a smile and say, "Fine, ping." By 9:30 in the morning, your jar is completely overflowing.
And the cognitive load of carrying that full jar is staggering. When we keep secrets, even small, seemingly insignificant emotional ones, we create what psychologists call an unresolved loop in our minds. Our brains hate open loops, so we constantly ruminate on them in the background. And the medical and psychological toll of that background processing is very real.
Wait, I read that keeping things hidden literally lowers your IQ on tests. How is that even possible? How does not telling my spouse I'm tired make me worse at a math test?
Because your brain only has so much working memory. When you are actively suppressing a thought, a significant portion of your mental focus is fractured and dedicated to keeping that secret contained.
Like having too many tabs open on your browser.
Exactly. You have less cognitive bandwidth available for problem solving. It degrades your physical health, spikes your cortisol, and honestly, it is just an exhausting way to navigate the world.
So this brings up a massive question for me. Where is the line between having healthy private boundaries and carrying a toxic secret? Because I don't want to just word vomit every single fleeting anxious thought to my barista.
Right, or every person you meet.
That would be chaotic.
And you absolutely shouldn't do that. The critical difference lies in rumination versus resolution. Privacy is a decided boundary that you are completely at peace with. You say to yourself, "I am keeping this detail to myself, and I feel totally fine about it."
Okay.
A secret, on the other hand, is a rumination. You are holding it over your own head. You're constantly monitoring it, wondering if you should tell, fearing what happens if they find out. It creates a barrier between you and the world.
It walls you off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In marriages, this constant suppression of the small stuff, that overflowing mason jar, creates what therapists call a parallel universe. You have two people standing right next to each other, flawlessly managing the logistics of a household, driving the kids around, paying the bills. But they're completely sequestered in their own isolated internal experiences.
Which sounds incredibly lonely. Even when you're in a crowded room, you're entirely by yourself. So if our jars are full of unsaid things, how do we actually decide what to share and when? Because clearly our gut instincts on this are totally broken.
Our instincts are completely skewed by how our brains evaluate social risk.
Hmm.
When we face the prospect of a tough conversation, we essentially only do half the math.
Let's use a heavy example. Falling out of love and realizing you need to end a long-term relationship. When you even briefly consider having that conversation, your brain instantly hyperfixates on two very specific things. First, the risks of revealing. Like, I'm going to destroy them, I'll be the villain, there will be crying, it's going to be a nightmare.
That's all the terrible immediate fallout.
Right. And second, you focus on the benefits of keeping quiet, keeping our mutual friends. I don't have to pack up my apartment. I avoid the drama. Things just stay comfortable.
And if you stop the calculation right there, which almost all of us do, the logical decision is always to say nothing, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
But the Harvard Business School developed something called the disclosure matrix, which introduces the two quadrants of the equation we actively ignore. We entirely forget to calculate the risks of not revealing.
Right. What actually happens if you stay quiet? You stay in a loveless relationship. You are being profoundly unkind to your partner by forcing them to live a lie. You are robbing both of you of the chance to go out and find actual happiness.
And we also ignore the final quadrant, the benefits of revealing, the self-efficacy you build by proving to yourself you can do a hard thing, the mutual respect that eventually comes from honesty, freeing each other.
We just don't even consider it.
No, and the reason we ignore these positive outcomes is because of a psychological phenomenon called impact bias. Evolutionarily, we over-index on immediate social danger. We are wired to assume that the fallout of an awkward or painful conversation will ruin our lives forever. We think the pain of a breakup will be permanent, when in reality, human beings are incredibly emotional and adaptable. We bounce back.
Let's test this matrix with a workplace example, because I think a lot of people will relate to this. Imagine you have a coworker who just blatantly took credit for your idea in a meeting.
Oh, the worst.
The worst. Now, the old way of thinking, just looking at the risks of revealing, says, if I confront them, they'll think I'm petty. My boss will think I'm not a team player. It'll be super awkward every time we pass in the hallway. So you just swallow it. Ping. Another ball in the jar.
But if you apply the full matrix, you have to look at the risks of not speaking up.
Exactly. If you say nothing, you're going to ruminate on it every night. You're going to feel passive-aggressive resentment every single time you see them on a Zoom call. You'll lose respect for yourself.
It eats away at you.
It does. But what are the benefits of revealing? You model self-respect. You establish a clear boundary so they never do it again. And if you actually have that awkward conversation, yes, it will be uncomfortable for about 10 minutes, but it usually ends up deepening the professional relationship because now everything is out in the open.
But knowing why you should share is great in theory. The real challenge is the execution. How do you actually do this when you are completely drained at the end of a long Tuesday, you walk in the door, and your partner asks, hey, what's wrong?
Tactical vulnerability. There is an incredibly simple, actionable framework for this. First of all, you have to banish the word fine from your vocabulary.
Yes. Fine is a thought-terminating cliche. It ends the conversation.
Exactly. Instead, when someone close to you asks what's wrong, you just need to complete 2 sentences. I feel blank, and I need blank.
It sounds almost too simplistic, but it is deeply effective because it bypasses logic and arguments. If you come home and say, I think you're ignoring me, that is an accusation.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thought, and it can be debated. Your partner will immediately get defensive.
Yeah.
But if you say, I feel overwhelmed, and I need you to just sit with me and listen without trying to fix it, that is highly credible, indisputable data. No one can argue with your feelings. It invites care and empathy rather than an argument.
And there's this amazing ninja-level tip for casual settings, too. Say you're standing on the sidelines watching your kids play soccer with another parent you barely know. The standard small talk is, wow, beautiful weather today. Look at them having fun.
Right, the usual banter.
But if you want to go one layer deeper without getting weirdly dark or oversharing your trauma, you just ask what the moment means. You say, look at them laughing. When's the last time you laughed that hard?
It's brilliant. You're prompting reflection and passing the torch.
Hmm.
You're allowing them the opportunity to reveal something positive and meaningful about themselves, which instantly elevates the connection above mere logistics and small talk.
But sometimes, despite all our frameworks, the emotions just hijack you. And there's this incredible story of a professor ugly crying on stage that I am just obsessed with.
Well, this story is amazing.
She's a junior academic giving a massive presentation in front of 30 senior academics at a famously tough, prestigious university. They are grilling her, but they aren't just asking hard science questions. They are being belligerent, rude, constantly interrupting her.
It's a nightmare scenario.
Surely, she's trying to maintain her professional composure, but she just breaks. Full-on, ugly crying on stage, which sounds like absolute career suicide, right?
By the traditional outdated rules of professional stoicism, yes, that is an absolute unmitigated disaster.
But here is the massive takeaway. She didn't just cry, apologize, and run off the stage. She stopped, collected herself, and revealed why she was crying.
This is the
She looked at this room of intimidating academics and essentially said, I need to tell you why I'm crying. I'm not crying because your scientific questions are too hard. I know my research. I'm crying because you are being incredibly belligerent and rude. You have a reputation for doing this to guest speakers, and it has to stop.
And the entire room went completely silent. She didn't ruin her career. In fact, one of those senior academics respected her so much for that moment that he later wrote her a glowing letter of recommendation for her promotion.
That is just so powerful.
Her emotions weren't just chaotic filler. She weaponized her vulnerability as highly credible data points about the toxic environment in that room.
She used her truth to hold a mirror up to their bad behavior.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this leads to the ultimate form of vulnerability, the catalyst confession.
Oh, I love this.
This is when a leader using their own vulnerability to destigmatize a massive systemic issue. Think of Magic Johnson in the early 90s revealing his HIV status. At the time, HIV was highly stigmatized, shrouded in silence and fear.
It was completely taboo.
Completely. But his revelation completely shifted the global cultural conversation overnight and prompted hundreds of thousands of people to get tested. True leadership isn't about appearing bulletproof and invulnerable. It's about using the messy truth of your own life to liberate others.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The ultimate takeaway isn't that you need to word vomit every anxious thought in your head or go into your next staff meeting and just start crying for no reason.
Please don't do that.
Right. But it means that treating your genuine emotions and flaws like highly classified state secrets is bankrupting your relationships, your health, and your potential.
The statistics at the end of life are profoundly sobering on this point. Research shows that a staggering 76% of our life regrets are the things we didn't do, the things we didn't say. A palliative care nurse who spent thousands of hours sitting with people on their deathbeds found that the number 3 most common regret of the dying is simply, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings.
I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive today, and I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. You spend so much energy curating the perfect version of yourself to ensure people will like you. But what if the messy, unresolved truth you are fighting so hard to hide is actually the exact thing that would make someone finally feel connected to you?